the spiritual power of simplicity. There is a spiritual freedom that comes from letting go of your physical freedom. There is a spiritual power that comes from letting go of your physical and worldly attachments. You see, many people, they are attached to something. Attachment is something that you're so attached to that you can't stop doing it. It almost like it has control over you. You're attached to it. A lot of people, they are attached to something. Some people are attached to smoking cigarettes. Other people are attached to entertainment. Other people are attached to anger. Other people are attached to drinking alcohol or negative thinking or vanity, or a lot of people are attached to something. And attachments can be on multiple levels. It can be on a mental level. So you're attached to this certain way of negative thinking, this mind chatter that you can't stop the mind chatter, always creating worst case scenarios in your mind. And regardless of how hard you have tried to stop that, you're so attached to it, you just can't stop that negative mind chatter. So it can be on a mental level. Attachment can be on an emotional level. So you're so attached to that way of feeling, that anxiety, that anger, or that pride, or that hate. And regardless of how hard you've tried to stop hating that person, you just can't stop hate that person. Regardless of how hard you've tried to stop worrying, stop feeling anxious about everything, you're so attached to that anxiety in your chest, in your heart, that it's there. So it could be on a mental level, on an emotional level, or it could also be on a physical level. You're so attached to that, smoking those cigarettes, or you're so attached to doing those drugs, or you're so attached to that person, regardless of how bad that person is for you, you're so attached to them, you just can't find a way to separate yourself from them. It could also be on a financial level. You're so attached to just spending money foolishly. You're so attached to just doing stupid things with your money, regardless of how much you say, I'm going to save, I'm going to invest, I'm going to start being more mature with my money. You're so attached to spending money foolishly. You're so attached to wasting your money on this entertainment, on these shoes, on that car, on that thing, and these are just attachments. And attachment is something, this is called a bondage. You are in bondage with that something, whatever that something is. Negative thinking, anxiety, spending money foolishly, a person, a situation, a thing. You're in bondage. A more simple way of saying it is you are a slave to that thing. That's just to put it in plain English. You are a slave to that thing. There's almost like there's a compulsion going on. It's like, I don't want to do that anymore, but I can't control myself. I don't want to be in that relationship anymore. I don't want to keep going back to that relationship because I know it's bad for me, but I keep going back. I don't want to use these drugs anymore because it's not good for me, but I can't control myself and I keep using drugs. I don't want to consume all that alcohol, that drunkenness. I don't want to live that lifestyle anymore. I can't control myself. I keep going back. I don't want to get angry. I always regret it afterwards. I can't control myself. I just burst out in anger. I don't want to be thinking all these negative thoughts, but I can't control myself. I can't control the mind. It just keeps growing. It's like it has a mind of its own. It's a bondage. You're a slave to that thing. A slave to that thing means you don't want to do it. You don't want to be there anymore. You don't want to live like that anymore. But you can't stop doing it. Why can't you stop doing it? Because you're in bondage to that thing. And until you break those bonds, until you break those chains, you will keep responding the way you respond. Until you break those bonds, you will keep responding in the same manner. The Bible tells us in 2 Peter chapter 2 verses 19, by what a man is overcome, by this he is enslaved. By what a man is overcome, by this he is enslaved. In other words, Whatever you allow to overcome you, you will be a slave to that thing. If you allow those drugs to overcome you, you will be a slave to those drugs. If you allow the porn and masturbation to overcome you, you will be a slave to that thing. If you allow anger to overcome you, you will be a slave to that thing, to that anger. If you allow fornication, adultery, control, manipulation, negative thinking, anxiety, depression to overcome you, you will be a slave to those things. In other words, the Bible's telling us, you have to overcome those things in order for you not to be a slave to those things. Because for as long as those things are overcoming you, you will be a slave to them. By what a man is overcome, by this he is enslaved. It's written in plain and simple. So let's talk a little bit about bondage. What is it? Where does it come from? How does it work? Why is it there? So many questions. Bondage to something, whatever you're bondage to. I used to be bondage to anger. I used to be bondage to drugs. I used to be bondage to alcohol. I used to be in bondage to negative thinking. I used to be in bondage with, not in bondage to. I used to be in bondage with, because you're in a bond. You're in bondage. When you bond with someone, you bond with your friend and, you just go hand in hand. You're in bond with that person. You're always together. You never separate. You even finish each other's sentences. I used to be in bondage to again. I used to be in bondage with depression, in bondage with anxiety, in bondage with negative thinking. Regardless of how much I tried just to break free from these things, I couldn't. And I didn't understand why I couldn't, because I was looking at it from the physical realm. And it wasn't until the Holy Bible, when I started looking at things from a spiritual realm, I say, aha, that's why I couldn't get free, because I was trying to fix it from a physical realm. Listen, you can't fix a spiritual issue from a physical realm. And it wasn't until I started reading the Holy Bible and Jesus came into my heart and I was able to break these bondages and actually free myself. But until the bondages are broken, you won't be able to free yourself. That's what we're going to talk about now. Bondage starts from the spiritual realm. It then manifests on the physical realm. The physical realm is an extension of the spiritual realm. Let me give you an example, a visual example of what I mean by that. Let's say that you walk into your bathroom and you see the floor tiles, they're filled with leaking waters. So you mop up those waters and then you come back 5 minutes later and the floor tiles are filled with leaking waters. You mop it up again, you leave, you come back, the spilled waters, the leaking waters are still there. You see, you're trying to fix that problem from a physical level based on what you can see on this physical realm. What you can see is water on the tiles, so you mop it up. What you can see, you come back again, water on the tiles, so you mop it up. And you do it again and again and again and again, like a hamster on a running wheel, thinking that you're going to fix that problem. You're not going to fix that problem until you get to the root of that problem. You see, trying to mop up the spills on the floor is not going to fix that problem until you get behind the walls, which is where the eye cannot see, which is a spiritual realm. Behind the walls, so you can actually see, hey, there's a leaking pipe. So regardless of how many times you mop up the spills on the bathroom tiles, as long as you don't get behind the wall to fix the leaking pipe, you will always try to fix a physical problem. You will always try to mop up those waters, and the spills will always keep coming back. And it's the same with the spiritual realm. Bondage starts on a spiritual realm. I'm not saying the spiritual realm is behind the bathroom wall, but that was just to give you a visual example, just so for those of you who are visual people, to try and animate it for you and make it visual so your mind can grasp it better. That's why I'm giving you the bathroom example. The spiritual realm is not behind the bathroom wall. The spiritual realm is an extension of the physical realm, and something happens first on the spiritual realm before it actually manifests on the physical realm. So for example, the spills take place behind the bathroom wall, the leaking pipes, before it actually manifests in your plain sight as water spilled on the bathroom tiles. And so bondage starts on the spiritual realm, and then it manifests itself on the physical realm as your experiences. So I'll give you an example. Anger is a spirit, and it's called the spirit of anger. It's a spirit, and what is a spirit? A spirit is a real, true, living entity without a body. You see, we are a spirit as well, but we have a body also. So we're a mind, we're a body, we're a spirit. We have a spirit inside us. We have a spirit. An entity is a spirit without a body, and this is why they like to attach to bodies, because they want a body. They don't have one. They're either attached to body, or some people could be demonized and the spirit is in them. And so on and so forth. So anger is a spirit, and it is called the spirit of anger. And if it has you bound on the spiritual realm, if you're bound with the spirit of anger on the spiritual realm, it will manifest on the physical realm. So if it has you bound either through your thinking, either through your emotional conditioning, then it will manifest in your life on the physical realm as you being an angry person. Always getting angry, always getting irritated, always lashing out, always regretting it, but then you're always going back and doing it again. You say, I regret it. I don't know why I did that. I don't know what came over me. I don't know. Well, we know it's the spirit of anger. You're bound to it. You can't control yourself. You just keep getting angry and you can't control it. How do we open the doors for these spirits to come in? Well, let's say that, you're an example again. Let's say that you're at work, everything's going wrong, the car breaks down, you're late for work, you have the boss on your head, then the AC's not working, so you're all sweaty, or if it's winter, then you're freezing, and the boss is annoying, the colleagues are stressing you, and then it's lunchtime, you order your food and it arrives late, so it's cold, and then it's as you're driving home in the evening, there's road rage, the drivers are annoying you, you get home, the dinner's late, and then the dinner's cold, and then the kids are annoying, and you see that spirit of anger that was chasing you around throughout the day, trying to lash onto you, but you weren't giving it the open door invitation. Well, guess what? In the evening, as everything just piled up, and the dinner was cold, and the kids were loud and naughty and annoying, you just lashed out and you acted out that anger. The second you acted out that anger, you opened the door and that spirit of anger came in. So now you get angry more often. You lash out more often. And every time you lash out, you say, I regret it. I don't know what came over me. But then you do it again. And then you say, I regret it. I don't know what came over me. But then you do it again. Whereas before, you were able to avoid it and stay away from it and put your mind somewhere else so you're not focused on it. And now it's just anger, 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 because you've opened the door to that. When you start, it could be a stronghold of the mind where it's tampered with your way of thinking. They start to build a stronghold of the mind, so now you're always thinking like that. It could be a conditioned way of feeling. It could be a way of acting. You've given them access to you in some way, shape, or form. And so anger is a spirit, and if it has you bound on the spiritual, it will manifest in your life on the physical realm as always being angry. If control, the spirit of control, because that's also a spirit, you take on their character. It becomes your character. It's being bound, it means it's your character now. the spirit of control, if it has you bound on the spiritual realm, either through your way of thinking, either through giving into it. So it's all about not giving the devil a foothold. It's all about not giving into it. It's all about having victory over it. It's all about defeating it. Because if that person, the example I use with work, and the colleagues were annoying and the boss were annoying, if they had authority over it, and authority is found only in Jesus Christ when he's in your heart, and then you have authority over it, and that anger is just not coming anywhere near me, then you're not opening any spiritual doors. But as long as you're trying to battle it and you're saying, I'm trying to control it, and I'm trying to this, and you're trying to do all by yourself, you're going to reach a stage where you're just going to explode. And then you open that spiritual door and the spirit of anger comes in. Jesus says, I have given you authority to tread on scorpions and serpents and over all power of the enemy. So you need Jesus Christ. It's Jesus Christ in your heart that wins these battles. It's a spiritual battle. It's a spiritual war. And so if the spirit of pride, because pride is a spirit as well, if it has you bound on the spiritual realm, either through your thinking, either through your emotional conditioning, either through your actions, and it has you bound on the spiritual realm, it's going to manifest in your life on the physical realm as a prideful person. When you see this prideful people, so prideful, so superior, so egoistic, that they're bound by the spirit of pride. That's nothing to be proud about. We need to pray for these people. There's nothing to be proud about. If you remember, Jesus always cast out demons. If you remember, Jesus always healed people. If you remember, Jesus always delivered people. Jesus always performed miracles on people. He freed people from whatever they were dealing with, whether they were dealing with something on a mental level, an emotional level, a physical level, a spiritual level. Jesus came in and he freed them from these things, from these bondages. Jesus comes and he frees you from these bondages. This is why I said earlier, this thing can only be won, can only be defeated. You will have victory only over these things once Jesus is in you, because Jesus has given you the power to tread on scorpions and serpents and over all power of the enemy. So Jesus would always come in and free people from whatever they were dealing with, whether they were dealing with self-destruction, self-destructive behaviors, whether they were dealing with sickness, whether they were dealing with infirmity, whatever they were dealing with. Whatever you're dealing with, anger, drugs, alcohol, fornication, masturbation, porn, theft, lying, control, manipulation. Whatever has you bound, it's a spirit that has you bound on the spiritual realm. All you can see is what is manifesting on the physical realm. Unless, of course, God gives you revelation, opens your eyes, and you can see beyond the physical into the spiritual. This is where discernment comes in. That's a different matter. And so the question is, how do we get ourselves out of these traps? How do we get ourselves out of these? I love you, my baby boy Facebook. How do we get ourselves out of these traps? How do we get ourselves out of these bondages? Let's start with how we get ourselves into these bondages first and into these traps, and then we'll talk about how to get ourselves out of it. We get ourselves out of it with the example given earlier, with the man going to work and the annoying boss and the annoying colleagues and the stress and so on. Somewhere you're giving the devil a foothold. Somewhere you're opening spiritual doors. You're deceitfully or you're deceitfully, ignorantly following the ways that oppose God. Deceitfully, ignorantly following the ways that are of sin, the ways of the world, the ways of the flesh, the ways of the carnal mind. This is all sin. Following the ways of the world, following the ways of the flesh, following the ways of the carnal mind. It's all sin. It's all opposing to the ways of God. The Bible tells us that the ways of the flesh and the ways of God oppose one another. They conflict one another. They don't agree. They lead in two completely different directions. The flesh cannot, by its own will, follow the ways of God, because it's the opposite of God. You need Jesus Christ in your heart to create this change. Through Christ, you are a new creation. You need Jesus Christ in your heart to create this change. Then one might say, so why did God create us in the flesh if the flesh disagrees with God? The answer is found in Genesis, the first book of the Bible, the Old Testament. God created Adam and Eve, and he created them pure and holy. They were walking in the ways of God. They were walking in the ways of the Spirit. And there were trees in the Garden of Eden, and God said, you can eat of all the trees, the tree of life, you can eat of all the trees. Do not eat from this tree, which is the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So you might say, why did God put that tree there to begin with if sin was a possibility? If someone grabs you by the neck and says, don't go there, don't go there, don't go there, that doesn't prevent you from wanting to go there. That doesn't keep you faithful. That doesn't keep you in love. Faithful and obedience and love is when that person doesn't have their hand around your neck and say, you have freedom to do whatever you want to do, and it is your faithfulness and your love that will choose to do the right thing. Holding your spouse here and saying you're not going to leave the house, you're not going to go anywhere in case you look at someone, in case you fall in love with someone, in case you go with somebody else, do something with somebody else, it's not love, it's not freedom. It doesn't prevent them from wanting to go and do something. It doesn't prevent them from being unfaithful. Them being loving and faithful is when you're not forcing them, you're not controlling them. They have the free will to go, and they choose to stay with you. They choose to be faithful. They choose to be loving, which is exactly what God did in the Garden of Eden. So the tree is there, and you have free will, because without free will, then God is controlling you, and God is not a God of control. That's the work of the devil, not of God. So the trees are there, both trees are there, which represent knowledge. Are you going to eat from the knowledge, the knowledge of God, which gives life to your spirit? Or are you going to eat from the knowledge of Satan, which brings death, a spiritual death to your spirit? It's a spiritual death. It wasn't a physical death, it was a spiritual death. If it were me, because I love God, because I want to be faithful to God, you could have the forbidden knowledge there. Forbidden knowledge could be anything from masturbation and porn and drunkenness and sexual immorality and lying and stealing and control and manipulation. That's what that represents. And I still choose God. Why? Because I want to be faithful to God and I want to love God. And the Satan will come in and try to deceive you, and do it sly ways, and you just have to stay close to God. And so that was about the tree of knowledge and good and evil. So deceitfully, we're following the ways of the world, the ways. So anyway, back there, I forgot to say something. As Adam and Eve ate from the forbidden tree, they fell into a fallen state. In other words, the state of the flesh. Because before they were in the state that they were walking in the spirit, then they fell into a fallen state, a dense state, a state of sin, a state of the flesh, a state of the carnal mind, and so on, a state of the world, and so on and so forth. Before they were in the ways of God, in the ways of the Spirit, walking in the ways of purity, of holiness. And as soon as from that forbidden knowledge, the forbidden tree, they fell into this state. And so we get ourselves into these demonic attachments, into these evil spiritual attachments, by deceitfully, ignorantly following the ways of the world, the ways of the flesh, the ways of the carnal mind. Some people are doing it ignorantly, some people are doing it willingly, and it's all a sin. And Jesus came to set you free from all of that. Just like one man, Adam, put the whole of mankind in a fallen state, a dense fallen state, one man, Jesus, comes and brings the whole world back out of that fallen state to reunite them with God. One man brought us in, one man brings us out. So Jesus came to set you free from all of that. Free from the bondage of sin, free from the bondage of the carnal mind, free from the bondage of the flesh, free from the bondage of the world, free from the bondage of your selfish ambition. Because when you're free from these things, there will be no anger, there will be no drunkenness, there will be no bondage to fornication, there will be no bondage to drugs, there will be no bondage to negative thinking, there will be no bondage to depression, anxiety, hate, and so on and so forth. Jesus came to set you free from all of that. So whether it be lust or jealousy or anger or pride or drunkenness that you're dealing with, or prostitution or drugs or lie or theft or whatever it is, Jesus came to set you free from all of that. And as I said in the beginning of the video, there is a spiritual freedom that comes from letting go of your physical freedom. What does that mean? There is a spiritual freedom that comes from letting go of your physical freedom. That means when the flesh says, I want to fornicate, deny yourself the freedom to do so. When the flesh says, I want to get drunk, deny yourself the freedom to do so. When the flesh says, I want to masturbate, watch porn, deny yourself the freedom to do so. When the flesh says, I want to get angry, deny yourself the freedom to do so. When the flesh says, I want to be jealous, I want to hate, I want, deny yourself the freedom to do so. There is a spiritual freedom that comes from letting go of your physical freedom. The Bible tells us in James chapter 4 verse 7, submit yourselves to God. Resist the devil and he will flee. Remember, that's a fallen state. That's a dense state. The state of sin, the state of the world, the state of the flesh, the state of the carnal mind. When the flesh says, I want drunkenness, submit yourself to God, resist the devil, and he will flee. Resist it. Resist that drunkenness. Remember the example I gave with the man going to work and getting annoyed with his colleagues and his boss? Resist the anger, and he will flee. Resist that drunkenness, and he will flee. Resist that fornication, and he will flee. These are all the traits of Satan. Submit yourself to God, resist the devil, and he will flee. The Bible tells us in 1 John chapter 4 verse 4, you are from God and have overcome them, because greater is he who is in you than he who is in this world. You are of God and have overcome them. Who's them? Them is the world, the devil, the flesh, the carnal mind, the ways of this world, the lies and the everything that is just not of God, the drunkenness, the pride, the anger, the jealousy, the prostitution, the drugs, the alcohol, the lust, and so you get the picture. You are of God and you have overcome them. Why have you overcome them? How have you overcome them? Because greater is he who is in you than he who is in this world. Greater is the Holy Spirit of God who lives in you than he, Satan, who lives in this world. That's why you have to live fearlessly. Fearlessly. Only then you have to live fearlessly in the power of the Holy Spirit who lives in you if you are to overcome all the powers of darkness. Because the spirit of anger is from the powers of darkness. The spirit of control, manipulation, pride is from the powers of darkness. Drunkenness is from the powers of darkness. Fornication is from the powers of darkness. You have to live fearlessly in the power of the Holy Spirit that is living in you. Fearlessly, because fear is not from God. Satan will always try to use fear to keep you bound in that thing you are bound to. I want to stop those drugs, but he keeps you in fear. Yeah, but you have to. How's it going to work? It will never work. And it keeps you in fear. It keeps you in worry. It keeps you in anxiety. It keeps you in doubt to keep you bound in that thing. I want to get out of that relationship that I'm bound to, but then I'm afraid of how am I going to do this? How will I survive by myself? I want to get out of that drunkenness that keeps me bound, but then, how do I change my lifestyle? I'm not good enough. And he will always come with lies and deceits and manipulation. It's all lies. You have to live fearlessly. Fear is not from God. The Bible tells you, for God has not given you a spirit of fear, but a spirit of power and of love and of a sound mind. You have to live fearlessly in the power of the Holy Spirit who lives in you if you are to overcome all the powers of darkness. There is a spiritual power that comes from letting go of the physical things you are attached to. There is a spiritual freedom that comes from letting go of the physical freedom. I have freedom to get angry. I have freedom to do drugs. I have freedom. There is a spiritual power that comes from letting go of your physical freedom. Come from letting go. You have to get into your Holy Bible. Get into prayer. This is a spiritual war that can only be won through Jesus Christ in you. Jesus is the one who dismantled the powers of darkness on the cross. So Jesus is the one that needs to be living in you to make this possible in your life, in your reality. For this reason, the simplicity of Jesus Christ is your strength. The simplicity of Jesus Christ is your strength. There is a spiritual power hidden in the simplicity of Jesus Christ. My book can be purchased below. Christmas donations to my ministry can be done below, and prayer requests can be sent below. Until next time, God bless you, and may the peace of Jesus be with you.